I'm Debbie Travis.
And I'm Tommy Smythe.
And this is Trust Me, I'm a Decorator.
Hi, Debbie.
Hello, hello, hello. I'm a bit nervous.
I hear a little bird tells me that you have some exciting news to share with our listeners and with me today. And it's news I'm pretty excited about.
I know. I'm quite nervous. It's a big thing, you know, when you've worked hard on something. So we now have what they call in publishing the cover reveal of my next book.
Oh, so you're not pregnant?
Well, that's my second surprise. I'm having triplets. No, Tommy, I'm not pregnant. Are you? Not yet. So in publishing, you have your publishing date when the book is out in the shops and on Amazon and things like that. But they all now do something called the cover reveal. So they reveal the cover of a book, and this is mine. And
it's like the literary version of a gender reveal.
Very similar, yeah. So it's a cover reveal, and it's really to get people excited. And also, the most important thing is for pre-sales. So it means that people can press a link and buy the book, and then they'll get it in the post like a week before it's in the shops. So it's a very important thing in publishing, and for an author, it's kind of hugely important because we haven't actually seen the book finished yet, obviously, like anybody else, but it really is the end of the road. There's no changing anything. You know, the book is being printed, and it's a fine moment, as they say.
I mean, I'm so excited about it because we've been talking about this book, even here on the podcast, for many months. And I do know about how important those pre-sales are and everything, but it must be such an exciting moment for you emotionally, because even though I joked like, oh, you're pregnant, really giving birth to this kind of a project is like going through the experience of gestating something for many months and then suddenly it's ready for the world. And it must be such an emotional thing for you.
Well, I think for any author, because it really starts with an idea, and I think every human being has a book inside them, but then a lot of us get kind of nervous. With me in this particular book, this is the 12th book, so I did 8 design books originally from like 1997 right through to the 2000s, and then I did a book called Not Guilty, which was about working and being a raising mother. Then I did Design Your Next Chapter, which was a massive hit, about my move to Italy. And then I did Joy, which was how our guests in Tuscany can take this lifestyle home with them. But what I've always been very good at, I think, is telling stories. And you've spent quite a bit of time. We just spent a week on a boat together. And you know, you can, you know, and you're a good storyteller. And so I had this idea of, because we're all a little bit fed up now of so much crappy stuff going on in the world, we really are in desperate need of a good laugh. I mean, we really are. And so
I mean, that's where this podcast came from, was our desire to help
make people smile.
To feel
exactly.
more buoyant. Yeah,
exactly. And my life here is a constant stream of stories. So what I started to do was write a year of a life living on this Tuscan hillside. But when you're writing, it kind of spawns other stories. So it's a bit like being at a dinner party and somebody's telling a story, and then somebody says, "Oh my God!" and you spiral into especially women are so good at this. You're spiraling into all these different things, and then 2 hours later, you can come right back to the beginning again. So I would be talking about something happening here in Italy in the present day, and it would immediately bring back memories of something that happened maybe when I was 15, or when I was a young child, or when I was in my debauched days in London in my 20s. So it kind of is jumping all over the place, but it keeps coming back to to a year here through 4 seasons.
Mm.
So the book is called Laugh More, which I think is a wonderful title because we all need to laugh more. So it's called Laugh More, Stories from an Unexpected Life. So it really, so for instance, it may be a story about artichoke season in
Mm.
Tuscany, in Italy, where everybody is buying artichokes, and there's something like 100 varieties, and I also, because food is so important to life
Yeah.
here, that I
When
put
I was there
recipes.
recently, every restaurant had artichoke recipes because they were in season. I ate so many
Exactly.
artichokes. I nearly choked on artichokes.
So good for you. So I put recipes in this book as well. Anyway, so I'm writing about artichokes and being in the market, and there's a funny story happened there. But then I suddenly, driving home, I thought, God, I nearly died once from an artichoke. And so
How is
what
that possible?
what had
Somebody threw one at you?
no, worse. So when I was about 18 or 19, there was until recently a very, very famous club in London. I mean, it was the club, and it was called Tramp. And
Oh, I know about Tramp. Yeah, the
yeah,
very
of
famous
course,
club. Like
a very
the
famous club
Floyds
where all
went
the
there. Like, yeah.
oh yeah, I mean Royals, Mick Jagger, I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
like all the names would be there, and they had a restaurant on the side of the dance floor, and so men could not get in those days without a woman because they didn't want gangs of lads in there. So
Right.
we used to go to the wine bars, pick up men so we could get in. So we used them, they used us. Once you were inside, it was like, do your own thing. But of course, we couldn't afford the drink. So we kind of hung around for a bit. So
And when you
this,
say we, you're talking about Jackie and you,
well,
right?
do you know what? I don't think I actually knew Jackie then. So it was a bunch of models then. So
Mm.
any kind of reasonably pretty girl got into this place. So next to the dance floor was a restaurant, and I didn't really know anybody, but there was a guy had invited me, and there was a bunch of rich guys and a bunch of cool girls. Anyway, they all got asked to dance, and this guy had ordered for everyone. So I was kind of straight off the train kind of thing from the north of England, as naive as you get. And they all get up to dance, the entire table, maybe 16 people, and I'm left alone. So a few minutes later, a waiter comes around and puts in front of me and everybody else a plate with a large globe artichoke, which you would get today in a supermarket, the big round ones, and
Yeah.
a little bowl with hot water and lemon, and and that was it really. And so I kind of look around, and I'm like, oh, and an empty bowl. So I didn't know what to do. So I ate it. And I ate the entire thing. I had never seen an artichoke before. I come from the north of England
What?
where the food is basic. I ate the thorns, the outside leaves, the gristle in the middle, the
Wait, the
entire thing.
whole thing.
And I thought
The
these
whole
people,
thing.
the entire artichoke. And I thought these people in London are very strange people eating, this was like cow food or something. I mean, what are they eating? But I was swigging it down with the bowl of lemon juice, thinking that was what you did.
That's the finger bowl. That's
I
what
said,
you
well, I
use.
didn't know. I had never seen it. We don't have finger bowls in the north of England. Anyway, so not in those days. Anyway, so what happened was all the girls came back, all the people came back, and there was a model sitting next to me, a little bit older than me, and she said, where's your dinner? Did you not get anything? And I said, oh, I ate it. She said, the whole thing? I said, yes, just as a little bit of blood dripped down,
Oh
and
my
so I was taken to
God.
emergency, to the hospital, and I was basically just humiliated and had a very sore throat for about a month. But I'd ripped the inside of my throat. So so they're kind of
Oh my
stories
God,
like
that's like
this.
eating wood and glass. Like it's
Oh,
like
it
you took a
was.
wooden lantern and just chewed it up and swallowed it. Like
Yeah,
that's
and I'm still surprised
terrible.
today when I see artichokes in shops, and they should have a label like dangerous, do not eat whole thing. But I guess everybody's not quite as
I mean,
stupid as I was at that age.
I was gonna say, to be fair, I don't think many people have eaten the whole thing. I mean, that's like eating corn on the cob and then eating the cob.
Exactly, exactly, and the little sticks at the end. So, so what was challenging about writing Laugh More was I have told many of these stories to friends and guests and family and stuff, many times over the years. But it's a bit like being a comedian, and I'm sure a comedian on a stage, when you write a joke, is quite
Mhm.
difficult, quite flat.
Yeah.
Whereas it was the same thing. So I would sit in my writing hut trying to write these stories down so they really come to life. And then once I
Mhm.
felt I'd got it right, I would take it inside and read first to Hans. And then I had the kids here quite a bit, and they would cuddle up on the sofa. And if they laughed, honestly, it was like I'd won the lottery,
Yeah.
because to see, your children, which, I mean, my children are grown up, but to see them roaring and not falling asleep or yawning, was gold. And that's how I did it. And then then finally, when I realized, it was correct, I'd send it to my editor. And then if she laughed out loud, and she'd send funny things back going, spluttered my coffee all over, they snorting again, So I hope people will just curl up with a glass of wine or a nice cup of coffee, and let it lift their spirits, because I think we do in these times. Just I'm so tired of bad news. I just need
I know.
something to make us grin.
Well, I've
So
loved listening to your stories for so many years of our friendship, and you are such an excellent storyteller. You are at times a slight embellisher. Like the one of the most amusing, like one of my favorite activities is to sit in a room or at a dinner table or in a bar with you and Jackie, where you'll start telling a story and then Jackie is the fact checker,
says,
and she'll
really?
say, "No, Debbie, no, Debbie, that is not exactly how it happened." But the way,
Well, the scary,
but
but
the
when
way
you're published, but the difference is when you're
I
published, they have fact checkers, and these fact
exactly,
checkers are like kind of,
yeah,
and what year was that? So you're not
yeah.
48. No, well, no, a little bit older, but just be a little bit careful with that, and so they're fact checking everything.
So, Debbie, what is the format of this book? Is it really just sort of narrative? Are there photographs associated with it the way there were with Joy? Remember, the photographs in Joy were so pretty.
They were so beautiful, yeah. So no, it's actually very different. So it's set around the four seasons. So it's winter, spring, summer, fall, um, and it's illustrated. Now, I had worked
Oh,
with an amazing woman. She's Australian, born in Melbourne, and she lives in Florence, in Italy. And we hooked up years ago. And she does sometimes during our retreats, we do art classes, because it's a very wonderful thing for people who, if they're a bit stressed, watercolor art. So I
you
really
know,
like
you know
what.
that when the kids say hooked up, it means something different, right?
Oh, does it? What does he mean?
It
A
means like
blowjob?
they hooked up. Yeah.
Something rude. Okay, good. No,
You
no,
and
not that
Lisa.
hooked up.
So you and Lisa
Uh,
hooked up years ago.
yeah, I don't think
Must
she's
have been a
fancying
lot of
me.
drinks involved in that evening.
Yeah, yeah. I really liked her, and I adore her now. So I said, look, what if we did this as an illustration? So it's because, again, illustrations can be very funny. And so the way it worked is I would write a story, I would send it to her, and she would illustrate it. And I would laugh. It was, so maybe it's a story about being chased by a wild boar, and she would
Ah,
she would draw it out, and she's amazing. She is such a beautiful, beautiful artist. So we worked
she's a
on, I
beautiful
think, this.
person too. I've met her at the retreats because you do
Yeah,
workshops with
yeah. Well,
her
we
and the
did a
women.
we did an art class a month ago when you were here,
Yeah,
where we
and
went to a
she's so
flower farm.
lovely.
Yeah, we went to a
Yeah.
wildflower farm, and all the guests picked the flowers and then had to paint them. So it was really lovely. Anyway, we worked very, very closely for about 18 months, and I would send the story. She would draw it out. And, there's just to give you an example of the humor. So there's a chapter in the summer about life in Italy, on the beach, because the entire country, from the 15th of August, it has a name, it's called Ferragosto, they head to the
Mhm.
beach. And
Hmm.
you know, when you go to the beach, I don't know if you're the same, Tommy, but let's say you go to Cape Cod, those beautiful long beaches. The first thing you do is you
Hmm.
drag your crap as far away from any other human being, so as if you've got the beach to
Yeah.
yourself. That's the way
Yeah.
we
You're
do it,
looking for
right?
your
You want to be
private
quiet.
spot. Yeah. Yeah.
You're looking for your private spot, but not in Italy. In Italy, you're going with your friends, your village friends, your neighbors, your clients. I mean, if I went to the beach in Cape Cod and a client went and put her towel down next to me, or somebody I worked with, I would be rather
Yeah.
annoyed, right? Because I want to be
Yeah.
alone. I want to be alone. So no, not in Italy. So it's like sardines, you know, head to toe, all together. The noise level on the beach, it's exact. And then there's an etiquette on the Italian beaches, which there has to be. So so one of the things is all all beaches in Italy are public beaches. No, sorry, all beaches in Italy are private beaches, but some are more private than others. Some, you know, and it's the etiquette of what to wear. So, you know, if you're going for lunch at the restaurants on the beach, tops are mandatory, not always kept. You know, bottoms are mandatory, again, not always kept. You know, so when I sent all
People
this
go
funny
to the restaurants without their bottoms on?
sometimes.
Like a
and,
person
they're,
would go and
and they're
have a
never
pizza
very
with his willy
attractive.
hanging out.
Well, can you imagine the illustrations we've got?
Well,
And
if you
and
couldn't
and
find a
so,
spoon, if you couldn't find a spoon to stir your coffee.
oh, Tommy. So yes. So there's this kind of etiquette and of the way people handle, and of course, there's also the getting to the beach. So many years ago, me and the kids and the family, they were young, drove from Paris to the beach, which was about 3 hours away. And when we went through the toll booth, lining up, and it was school holidays and it was jam packed, they had students giving out paper bags with a couple of yogurts, some apples, and some toys. And they would look at the driver, who was usually the bloke, the dad, and they would say, "Good luck, mate. Good luck." And you see all these men and these women looking so angry, hitting the back of the seat. Stop it, don't touch him, I will stop the car, you know. So typical families going on holidays. And of course, it was the most hellish journey. And I'll never forget these tiny little European cars packed packed every square inch, and then the roof racks with boats and oars, and I mean it's fun, you know, beach balls. And so of course
Umbrellas.
there's an amazing drawing of a like a Fiat 500 stacked up with all the crap and everything. So
Oh
you
my
know, it
God.
was great fun to send these stories, and then she would capture them, so they're throughout. And then what we did was the publisher loved the pictures so much that we decided to make it the cover. So the cover is lots and lots of illustrations, really like a frame of illustrations explaining the book. So the cover makes me laugh. And here it is. Drum roll. Here is the cover of Laugh More Stories from an Unexpected Life by me, Debbie Travis.
Lisa is so talented as a watercolorist. That's her chosen medium, the medium in that she works in. And
Yeah,
the color on the cover of the book is so joyful. And I think that's
exactly.
just such a signature part of your brand and who you are in your DNA is this celebration of
Exactly.
color and
And you
life.
know, she would ring me, she would call on the phone and be weeping with laughter. And then I would do the reverse, because she did a picture of my grandmother in the early 70s, and she said, "Okay, describe her to me." And I said, "Well, she was what do you call it? A fag hag. You know, she was surrounded by handsome gays. She
She-
was young. She was only in a, you know, for a grandmother, she was in maybe a late 40s. And I used to be sent to the south of France. I've told you this story before. Um,
well,
to
our
get me out.
listeners know your grandmother very well
They
because
do,
she's been such
they
a
do,
character in your stories here at the podcast.
exactly. And she would she smoked, and she had one of those things you put the cigarette in the end. And she would wear Pucci, and she'd have these, you know, Pucci Gucci kind of, you know, long caftans, which was the fashion down in the south of France at the time. And when I sent Lisa the story, she was howling, and then she said, "Okay, stay on the phone. I'm WhatsApping you the picture, the illustration of your granny." And I just burst into tears because it's
Oh
hilarious,
my
and there's this
God.
woman
Yeah.
in her Gucci Gucci. But the story there was I was maybe 10 at the time, and I'd been sent down, and my grandmother was an antique dealer, and the south of France was very expensive for antiques. So we would drive over the border into Ventimiglia, which was the last town on the French border in Italy. So
Mhm.
she
Just
rarely
on
ever.
the other side of Nice and Monaco.
Yes,
It's like right
exactly,
there. Yeah. Mhm.
exactly. And anyway, so I wasn't asked to go because she usually went with a couple of these guys, and they would scout the markets and buying jewelry and bits and bobs and things like this, bric-a-brac. And so one day she was putting on her lipstick, very heavy red lipstick, and I was sitting on the bathtub watching her, and I said, "Granny, can I come?" And she went, "Of course you can." And I was like, "Really? Really?" So what that meant was, no, I wasn't spending a lovey-dovey afternoon with my granny. I was actually left in the town square, and there was no cell phones, of course, alone. Well, my mother would have had a fit, but my mother was back in England. So I was left in this square, and
How old were
she
you?
was 10, and in a foreign country, and for like 4 hours while she went shopping, and she was alone at the time. She had none of these very smart men with her, so she was out looking for stuff. And then she said, "Stay here and I'll pick you up in 4 hours." She gave me a couple of francs and to buy ice cream. So she came back and we got in the car, and I remember what she was wearing. It was a Nina Ricci fuchsia silk blouse with these long, huge, I don't know what those sleeves were called, like butterfly sleeves type of thing. So in those days, we had a border control, and we go to the on the Italian side, and the guy's like, "Avanti, avanti." He's just looking at her bum and stuff. She drives on, and now we're on the French side, 200 yards ahead. So the Frenchman comes out, and he tells her to get out of the car, and I get out, and he opens the trunk, and there's nothing in it, nothing. And so he tells her, allez, allez, in French, go, go. But he leaves the trunk open, and he's standing there in his full uniform. And my grandmother puts her arm up to bring the trunk down, and she had something like 25 gold watches strapped to her arm, antique gold watches.
Oh my
So this
God.
guy, next minute, she's in a jail, and I had to sit on the side of the road and found an American tourist who would go to a phone box with me to call my mother to say Granny's been arrested. And of course, the rest was
How
history.
old were you at this time?
10,
How old?
10 years old. So, but
Oh
that was
my
my
God.
granny. So there's quite a few, and her storytelling was incredible. So my mum was very good, but my grandmother, I mean, she would have us as children, like mouths open, and she would tell us tales. And my mother would say, "Mother, stop, stop," because they would get very saucy. But she had this talent for, quietening a room as she told
Mm.
tales of this opulent life in the south of France. So it was,
So you come by it honestly.
and that's how I come by it, honestly. Exactly. So that's how Lisa came in. So we would literally, I'd share the story, she'd do the illustration, I would howl, and that was it. And it was the most wonderful process,
Well, it's such a
because
rare thing to be so compatible with a person that they really actually get you
yeah,
in that way, to be able to illustrate things that you then react to in a familiar way, like
yeah,
like you're recognizing something that you know, even though it's
exactly.
something someone else has created from your own
Exactly.
stories.
And some of the stories are quite poignant, and
Mm.
do a bit of a flip because they're really quite moving and upsetting, and I didn't know whether to put them in, and then my editor sobbed so much, and I thought, well, maybe that's a good sign, because then you're laughing again in 5 minutes. But one of them was about me I went to two convents as a child, and I
Mm.
was brutally abused in the first convent, like we all were. So, and really didn't think much of it until years later when I was like, oh my God, this was not normal. So I wrote about it, and I will get letters from other people I know who went to similar convents. And that was a lot of fact checking as well, because I thought, have I made this up over the years? And then I couldn't find it. I couldn't. And a
Mm.
friend wrote to me in the north of England, and she said, because I'd asked her, what happened to this convent? And she said, oh, they changed their name. And so we found it. And then we found the Facebook page of all these people who had similar stories. I mean, it made me, I was so upset,
I'm
especially the boys.
sorry.
But, oh, it was awful. I mean, but it makes you tough old boot that I am today. But the story of that and the tears, I had drawn a picture when I was about 13 of a little girl crying.
Mm.
And I was telling my youngest son about this, or read him the story in the book. And he says, Mum, you painted a picture of a little girl crying. And I said, oh God, yeah, but where would that be? He says, but I have it. I have it
What?
on my wall. You
Shut
gave it to
up.
me 20 years ago, you daft old thing, And I'm like, really? So he photographed it, and so that's in the book. And it's my drawing from when
Wow.
I was a young girl of my despair, because often it's a way of letting things out to draw. And I guess I found, I found a way of de-stressing, you would say today, of this incidents that happened over years. But so it kind of,
You've always been a very creative person, and creativity is not just one thing. I mean, your creativity runs the gamut from, decoration to writing to doodles and drawings, and
yeah.
I mean, you've always found a way to be creative.
Well,
Have you tried
I'm glad
singing
it's
yet? What
in.
about a music career?
Oh God, no! You don't want to hear me sing. But I could not do what Lisa does. But I said, look, am I going to, stamp on your talent? And she said, no, let's put it in. Let's put it in. And that's so. There's one illustration in there that I did as a girl, and it's really quite cute. It's just of a 6-year-old bawling her eyes out. But then it slams you again with another funny story. So it's a roller coaster of tales,
Mm.
really. And then it brings you back to what's going on here. And I think you're in the book. That the car rallies are in the book. And the funny things that happen.
Yeah, of
Because
course. I mean,
when you're doing all this stuff, you can't help. If you stay at home all day and watch television, you're not going to have incidents in your life. If you're out and about, stuff happens. Whether it's dropping
oh
something in the
yeah.
supermarket,
Oh my
um,
God, yeah. Well, I mean,
friend.
if anyone's listening who hasn't heard our podcast episode entitled 101 Ways to Get Arrested in Europe with Debbie Travis, then you'll understand what Debbie has just said, which is once you go out in the world, things happen to you. And if you go out in the world with Debbie Travis, more things happen to you.
Oh my God! Well, we should write that book. We should go touring around the world. But yeah. So this is what they call the cover reveal, and it'll all be over sites and things like that, and on my website.
So
And it's a
exciting.
way of pre-selling the book, which is quite important. And I've already done the audiobook. So
I remember you telling me about that. So for our listeners, tell them about what that was like, because I remember you were quite worried about your voice because you were talking so much, which even for you was more talking than usual.
even for me. So when you do an audiobook, a lot of novels are read by people because they're for actors and things like that. Because
Yes.
the novelist,
I was picturing Julie Andrews
for
reading.
me,
Yes, of
oh,
course.
I don't know. But anyway, but with me, my voice is kind of, I guess it's known because of 20 odd years on TV. But
Mhm.
so I've done all the audio. It's the third one I've done. And it's an amazing procedure because you sit in a sound booth, but you have to protect your voice because you're literally like reading your book for about 5 hours a day. And
Yeah.
you can feel the vocal cords, like I guess a singer on stage, if you're doing a tour,
Mhm.
you feel the strain. So, so there's certain things you can drink and not drink. obviously not gin, but because you have to keep the level up all the time. You
Yes.
can't get
The
tired,
energy
or
level is what you mean.
energy level
Energy.
has to
Yeah.
stay woof like this. And so you can't have any drinks because you're keeping your voice loose all the time. So you're drinking all the time. So you nothing with milk in, because milk lines the vocal cords, lines the throat.
Mhm.
So things like chamomile tea, ginger tea, nothing with bubbles, because
Mm.
you'll be burping down the microphone. So you're keeping it going, and then they stop every so often,
Mm.
and everybody takes a break, and you can't talk in between. So I'm always dying to chat to whoever the engineers are and stuff like that, and they're going, "No, Debbie, sit quietly, shut up," because
Yeah.
you
Rest
must.
your voice.
Yeah. And no going out at night. So, if anybody calls, it's like you pretend you've got laryngitis going, can't talk, can't talk. And that takes about 6 days to do. And then
It's
they edit,
amazing.
and then you go back in afterwards,
Yeah.
and they do any fluffs and things that didn't work out.
All the
Okay.
pickups. Yeah.
All the pickups and things like that. But I love the process. It's really fabulous. And I guess it's like doing this, or, being on the radio or something.
I think it's so much more personal too, because your books are so personal that you are the person reading them. I mean, lots of fiction and things like that, I think could be read by someone else. But because you have the training in broadcasting, because you have the well-known voice, and because it's such a personal story, for all three of those reasons, it makes perfect sense that you would do the audio version of your own book. I think it's
Yeah.
interesting too that you know, you have 12 books under your belt. Is this 13 or 12?
12.
This is
I think
12.
maybe I should
So
miss out 13, like they
no, you
do.
go from 12 to 14 like they do in hotel floors
Lobby.
in the
Yeah, yeah.
elevator. But I think it's so interesting to me. I'll tell you something that I've observed over 3 years of doing retreats with you at the villa. I've noticed that the women, when they come to the villa, often bring books for you to sign.
Yeah.
Often they're given books for you to sign at the villa, but many times they bring the books with them. And it's always fascinating to me to see which women bring which book, because there are
Yeah.
12, I mean, up until now, 11 to choose from. Are they going to bring Design Your Next Chapter? Are they going to bring Joy? What book are they going to bring for Debbie to sign? And
Mm.
it's so interesting. And I really believe that this next book, because you've been telling me about it as you've been writing it, I've been sort of sitting on the sidelines in the bleachers cheering you on while you've been writing it.
You
I
have.
really think this is going to be the one that people keep and refer to over and over again,
Yeah.
because laughter is, I mean, there are funny stories in all of your books, but I think that this one, as a compilation of your life stories, the ones that are the most amusing and the most interesting and that hold maybe the best lessons, will be the one that people go to back and again and
And
again.
I think there is I didn't want this to be a teaching book like Design Your Next Chapter, which I have to say, when people bring that book for me to sign, and it's stuffed with Post-it notes
Mm,
of, of ideas that they've got about how can I change this? How can I do this? That I love. But I think with this book that, there is a little message through that, I've had just as much heartache and failure and miserable bloody moments as everybody else.
sure.
So sometimes, people don't think that. They see you as this, image of, which is, the problem with social media. It's all
Yeah.
a bit of a
Relentlessly positive and
relentlessly
yes,
positive and stuff like this. But when they know that, things were tough for you, or, whether
yes,
it's
of
your
course.
parents or you growing up, or
Mm,
that, and it's also generational. So I
yeah.
think what's kind of nice about this book, that there are things in there that would not happen today. I mean, parents would be
Mhm.
probably locked up, like a granny leaving you in a square in a foreign country. It just wasn't done, and
No.
and and today you'd be in trouble. So I think. I find the generation gap a little disturbing at the moment. So I hope that younger people will read it and see that there was tools that we had. I
Mhm.
think because I do think we were a little bit tougher in those days, and there were tools that helped us get through things, like, this, pull up your socks and get on with it. And we were softer than our parents, who were softer than the post, the parents who came out of the war. You know, when you're living in the war years, you're not whining about little stuff. You're trying to find food for the table. So every generation brings something good, and a way of tackling um, life's
Adversity. Yeah.
adversity and life's crap and life's this. And so I hope when they read some of these stories that do have funny endings,
Mhm.
and that we can laugh at ourselves, because
Yeah.
life is funny. And sometimes when you can, we had an incident here 10 days ago, where a friend of mine who was helping with the car rally ran into the supermarket, because we don't supply Coke here. Not Coke, the drug.
Coca-Cola, let's specify
That's a
Coca-Cola.
new job for me. Coca, yeah. The barn's full
Like
of
that
Coke.
television show. What's that show? The money laundering show, Ozark. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I've
Grim
got a
Hands
little
will run your own Ozark.
yeah, a little nice business on the side. But because for the health week, it's not the greatest thing to offer. So anyway, with the car rally, I can't stop people drinking Coca-Cola. So she ran into the supermarket, and she was ages. Like, I'm standing with the dog outside in the heat. What is she doing? Then she runs out and she grabs a trolley and just looks at me with terrified eyes and goes back in. And she had grabbed a box of 12 Coca-Colas and dropped them on the
Oh my
floor, and every
God.
single one broke. So there
Oh my
was some
God.
guy with a mop with a withered look, but what she didn't realize, the reason he was so like, oh, for God's sake, not again, is because it was a Sunday, and all the rentals here,
Mm.
lots of rental houses, start on a Saturday. So on Sunday, all these foreigners go to the supermarket to buy goods. And supermarkets are different in every country, and they've different, how do you get the trolley, the cart, how do you do this, how
Yes.
do you pay, and people, it's just different. So that foreigners apparently are always knocking bottles of wine off the shelf, or always not breaking something. So this poor guy, she probably was the 30th client that day that he had to mop up after.
Yeah.
And
He
he, and
went
he
in
just
that day knowing he was going to be dealing
yeah.
with
So
this.
after she'd spent 10 minutes in the car sobbing about it, um, we started laughing, and she said, oh God, it was awful. So if you turn these situations around
Yeah.
to the humor of it, and that poor sod who's probably still mopping up glass and Coca-Cola, 12 bottles she dropped, and that's what life is all about. And we need to laugh more, and we need to laugh at ourselves and all the silly things that we do.
Well, I will tell our listeners just a small story about the last time that you and I were together, which was at one of the women's retreats. And for anyone who hasn't been to those retreats, we often have forums, which are like a salon where you sit around and have conversation, usually centered around a certain subject. And Debbie was presiding over one of these salons one night and one afternoon, evening into aperitivo time. And she read an excerpt from her new book to these women, a group of 18 or 20 women. And I have to say, and I'm not exaggerating, we were all crying. We were laughing so hard.
What was
And
the
it was the
story? I
story
can't
about the
remember.
pond. You read the little
Oh
story
God,
about the creation
yeah.
of the pond at the villa. And it was so fun for the women because they knew
Sergio.
they knew the pond. They'd seen the pond. The pond is quite gorgeous, but it wasn't always that way. And there was a journey from an idea of having a pond to actually the pond that it is today at this moment. And that journey itself is so funny, and it's so filled with saucy, Italian flirty stories and humor. And I think, what I learned in that moment, other than the fact that you're quite a talented and a gifted storyteller, is that your idea for this book, your wish for this book, which was that it would bring joy and laughter to people who read it, was very real and very visceral in that moment, because it was a room filled with people laughing hysterically at a story, myself included. So I loved that because it was a preview.
It was a little preview, and what's so funny about that is you can't help but laugh at the Italians,
Oh,
because they just have a way, and sometimes this lost in translation. So 2 days ago, we've got this car rally on at the moment, and one of the mechanics is Italian. and very good looking, very nice. So I come out, I haven't seen him since September. And I've, I have been on a bit of a diet. And so he goes, "Oh, Bella, you are so thin. You look fantastic. Last week you're so fat. Today you are so thin." And I'm like, is this a comment? And he means no harm at all, but it's just the
No,
way
he's
it's
just being funny.
translated. And I'm like, oh, I wasn't that fat, but maybe I
You
lost
were
10 pounds.
not.
But yes, all right. So I was like, do I go and throw myself across the bed and sob? So it's very funny. But
That
so
is funny.
again, when you're dealing with different cultures,
Yeah.
and there's a few stories in there about when Jackie and I hiked across Vietnam,
Mm.
and we had a massage issue.
Oh yeah, I know this story. This
So,
is a really funny story. Oh my God.
so there were
Adventures of
we
You and Jackie is its own book.
well
Let's put it that way.
we'd before we did this big hike to raise money for colon cancer. We'd stayed at the Rex Hotel in Ho Chi Minh City, which is the old hotel from the Vietnam War, where all the journalists were. And I don't think they've changed the linen since then. Anyway, so when we get there after this long flight, everybody went for a hike. And I said to Jackie, "I'm not going for a hike. We're going to be walking for the next 20 days. Come on, let's go and get a massage." So we called downstairs and the woman says, "Oh, $5." So I said, "Oh my God, Jackie, it's $5 for a massage, for an hour's massage." So you put on these little paper underwear and stuff, and we have these massages. 20 days later, when we come back after walking across Vietnam, like all day, every day, stinking and filthy, stupidly, I told the whole crowd on the bus that, "Oh, you can get a $5 massage." And Jackie's like, "Shut up, they're all going to have one. There won't be any room for us." So anyway, everybody rushes to reception. We all book our massage, and they said, no worries, we'll get people in to do it. So we all had a massage at the same time, like 25 people. So everybody came out, and there was one honeymoon couple. I don't know if I can say this on a podcast, but anyway, there was one honeymoon couple, and they'd both gone in separately and had their massages. So one by one, we all came out and paid, and we all pay our $5. We pay our $5, and we all sitting down, chatting. Wasn't that a great massage and everything? And at the end of the counter, you hear this young guy in his 30s on his honeymoon go, "But that's not right. Everybody else paid $5. Why is mine $25? And in the loudest voice, this Vietnamese beautiful girl says, "Yeah, but sir, you had happy ending."
Oh my God.
Marriage over. And
Wow.
then
On
she
the
says,
honeymoon before
"Yeah,
it
but
even
then
started.
she knew exactly what he was saying. You had happy endings. If you like, you can play with air miles."
Wow.
And
Oh
I'm
my
sitting next to the
God.
new honeymoon wife, and she's like, she couldn't speak, and that was it. We never saw them.
That's insane.
I know. So some of the stories are a little bit like, and I hope people will use these stories to, to either ignite themselves or to
Or remind them of their own funny
of their
stories.
own stories, exactly, because
When
they're all
you and I
there.
first talked about that, we went around the table and everybody had some sort of an awkward massage story. You could
Yeah,
write a whole book of awkward massage stories, collecting them from various people, because we've all had something
we've all
happen.
had them. We've
Yeah.
all had them. Oh my God! So yeah. So it's laugh more stories from an unexpected life.
I think it's going to be a colossal hit. Having heard some of it read by you, and knowing how funny your stories are over the years, I'm very happy for you. Congratulations, my dear friend, that you
Thank you,
have
Tommy.
birthed this wonderful thing that we
Okay,
all
so
now get to enjoy.
how are you, Tommy? What are you up to? After I've
This
chatted
one's
for
not
like
about
an
me.
hour.
The next one can be about me.
Okay, it will be. It will be.
Find the link to pre-order the book and support our dear Debbie Travis in the show notes. The book is Laugh More, Stories from an Unexpected Life, out October 22nd and available to reserve now.
Thanks for talking about the book with me. Follow and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast apps, and we'll see you soon.